Even though it sounds like your approach is definitely like a lot more of a sort of like mindset thing when in terms of the relationship to food and nutrition, but I do want to just pick your brains as far as like with the actual like hard science of it. Like what can you tell me?
Oh man. So I would say I'm a nutrition agnostic, which can be really frustrating for some people because and I think social media plays a big part of this, the way that creates very polarizing opinions and extremes. And so to bump into someone who's a nutrition agnostic, where I go, well, I don't think there's one best way of eating, but there's probably a best way of eating for you, the individual, and it's going to take a process of trial and error to figure out what that looks like. Now, for me, I tend to do better on a slightly lower carbohydrate approach. I'm not going full ketogenic or anything like that. I like carbohydrates. I enjoy them. But I also have a tendency to, well, I've been obese. And so um, and carbohydrates, we live in a carbohydrate abundant society. Like, well, it's a combination of carbs, fat, and salt. But um, and so I think for each individual person, you have to say, okay, well, what are the factors that are in play here? And let's go through this process of a little bit of trial and error to figure out what works best for you. So I practice intermittent fasting, but part of the reason I do that is it's a really easy way to create a calorie deficit. Like I don't know that I would say intermittent fasting is a magical metabolic state. Neither is, say, ketogenesis, in my opinion. But they both have their merits and their benefits. For me, it means that I no longer have to count calories. You know, I just create a fed window, and my fasting lasts anywhere from 16 to 19 hours. I wouldn't recommend that for a lot of people, and even for me, go back a couple of years, and that probably wasn't a healthy way to eat, because I would use fasting as a way to trade. I've been good, not eating food, so now I can eat whatever I want in this short little window of time, and so on. So it's creating this sort of fast binge cycle that wasn't really healthy. And so even intermittent fasting, if you're not able to sort of manage, and I wasn't able to manage it healthily, that I don't think it was a great approach. But now, I mean, like, I'm a dad of a young kid. I run two businesses. I'm trying to be a husband as well as a good human being. I don't have time to pull out my scale and weigh food. Now, to be fair, I'd done a lot of calorie and macro counting for quite some time, so I got pretty good eyeballing food and stuff. But in a nutshell, I would say every person kind of needs to go through this process of trial and error, because ultimately, if what you're doing to, let's say, to lose weight or to get to the physique that you want to do, if it's not something you can keep doing, ultimately your results you're not going to keep. And so for me, I was like, what is a way of living that feels doable and manageable? So for me, fasting's easy. Like, I just skip breakfast. like, and I take calls through my lunch hour. So I don't usually eat till about 1 o'clock. I do evening calls as well, between usually 6:30 and 8:30 my time. And so I usually finish eating by 6:30. That's kind of why I end up being like 19 hours. And I'm so accustomed to it that I really don't even think twice about it. So typically eat 2 meals a day. That allows me to maintain my weight without a lot of mental effort. And so that's why I think it's ultimately beneficial. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying I'm an agnostic, and I think everyone goes through an individual process to discover what works best for them.
Wasting my time.
You just can't help yourself, can you?